Okay, it is Monday, September the 18th. This is a meeting of the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee, which we are calling to order now at 6 p.m. Present are David Douglas, Lisa Huizinga, Paul Yingling, and no other committee members on Zoom. Okay, so we do have a quorum. Do we have anybody else on Zoom other than Nick?
No, just supposed to be going nowhere.
Okay. All right. So as far as our agenda, has everybody had a chance to review it? Do you have any changes, deletions, corrections?
Sorry. Pardon me. There is one correction to the minutes. We're going to want to add, and I'll project that page in just a second, but
Okay.
I didn't upload the subsequent pages to the minutes. And then we added to the record.
Okay. Paul, did you have something?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to clarify that we're voting on a corrected agenda that includes minutes revision.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So, and I guess we should take a motion and to make that change. Is that correct?
Yeah, and then I'll bring up the minutes and
Okay.
Another
Okay.
motion to something.
Okay. I move that we amend our agenda to accept revised minutes for review and approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Do we have anybody on that are signed up to talk?
I don't have any public speakers signed up.
Okay.
Here are the minutes. Share those, we can focus on Zoom. And move this over here. And so for some reason my upload stopped off at that, right around in here. And so this part of the minutes needs to be added to the record.
Did I sent it out to the committee this afternoon so that everybody would have a chance to review the minutes before we got here and we wouldn't have to read it. Any corrections or changes, any kinds? All right, then do I have a motion to accept the minutes of our August the 28th meeting?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous. All right, moving on to old business. Let's see here. As far as our CUSP, SFA and furworm grant projects, did we discuss last? I think in the last meeting, we discussed that we have an extension of those two the furworm and the SFA grants to April and October of 24, which means we're going to be able to get in some more work pending funding. And Adrian Knight is attempting to get an extension even beyond the April and October dates. So that's sort of nothing's firm yet, but except the fact that we do know we have a little extra time, and that will cover the existing right-of-way work that we had started. It covers any people who are private property owners that might want to have their resident property mitigated. There's still cost sharing money for that. So that was really good news. I think in the last meeting, we also discussed the Kirkpatrick Family Fund grant application, which was submitted. It has been accepted by the Kirkpatrick Family Fund and is under review. So for the purpose of discussion of item 5A, and then what we'll discuss under 5B also, we did make the grant application to Kirkpatrick Family Fund for a total of $65,000. And I think that we went over the details of that last time, which basically if we were to totally use the CUSP grants, the SFA and furworm grants, the calculation of the funds available is about $176,000. Under the cost share split, the town's portion would be round numbers, $105,000. Obviously the town, that's a big nut. So we made the application to grant, to the Kirkpatrick Family Fund to, in essence, cost share with the town on that remaining 105,000 on a 60-40 split basis, where the Kirkpatrick Family Fund would take 60% of our nut, leaving the town with 40%, or roughly $40,000. So just a point of clarification, and as we move forward in the agenda to item 5B, the town, if the town does not allocate any funds for mitigation, then essentially the CUSP grant and the Kirkpatrick Family Fund grant, if approved and granted, would essentially go away. So the gating aspect, as it has been all along, is how much money will the town budget in its 2024 budget for that project. Okay. So, it comes down to, if the town can only afford, 15 or 20,000, then that will determine how much money the Kirkpatrick Family Fund will advance, as will it determine the amount that CUSP will grant. So I kind of wanted to walk through that, and I just want to make sure everybody understands clearly what we're talking about.
So the split between CUSP and the town, not including the cost Kirkpatrick family, is 105 for us, 70 for CUSP.
It's 176 is the total. So if it's 105 for us, it'd be about 70, 71.
Okay. So rough math, 63% or so is us. The remaining 27% or so is CUSP.
No. So CUSP still is on the hook for, it's 40%.
Right.
Okay. Of 176,000.
Right.
The town is on the hook, if we fully utilize,
right,
for 106,000.
Right.
So if Kirkpatrick Family Fund comes in for 65,
right,
then the town's remaining portion is 40.
I guess my question would be is, let's say the town raises 20, Kirkpatrick kicks in 30, then would CUSP do another 25 or so?
It would it would all be prorated.
So the portions would remain.
The percentages would remain the same.
Okay.
CUSP would still have 40% of whatever that total is, determined essentially by how much does the town budget.
Okay. So it wouldn't be an all or nothing. We could, if we can't get to 40, we could get to
That's
30,
exactly
20.
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And essentially that's the way this has operated essentially for the last 2 years,
Mhm.
is the town budgeted in 22, I think the budgeted amount was maybe 17.5. And this year was 15. I may be off on the 2022 to 2022 amount, but it's been in that neighborhood between
Right.
15 and 20,000 per year. So CUSP has had to take what the town budgeted and develop a work scope that fit within the town's ability to fund.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah.
that clear?
Yes,
That-
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
We're kind of
Okay.
cutting the foot to meet the shoe, it's
Yeah.
yeah, right, okay,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So, the other issue, here it is that Adrian has, until things begin to get firmed up, Adrian doesn't have specifically identified acreage to work. And the issue is how many workable acres are left. Because, you get into terrain, the steepness of terrain determines how much it costs per acre. And there is a limitation on how much biomass can be left in place.
Right.
And there's a concern right now that the amount of work that we've already done, the biomass that has been lopped and scattered, which is the prescription, it is, you could say the forest is getting full.
Okay, there's a capacity.
There's a capacity, yeah. And so there's some mitigating factors around this. That's why this is so, you can't nail it down yet until we sort of know how much money is there, until Adrian knows what he's got to work with, and he can come and really do a field study of the workable acreage. Once all that sort of gets pulled together, we'll know exactly what can be done. So it could be, let's just say, best case scenario, the town budget's 40,000. We get the Kirkpatrick Family Fund grant for 65, and CUSP puts theirs. We may have all the money necessary, but it may come down to the point that we just don't have enough workable acreage. So in that case, they'll work what they can. Everybody will share in the cost.
Right.
And that'll be it. So, sorry, I'm having to look. It's hard to look both ways. So that's the best explanation I can give as to where we are right now. Okay.
David, Karen here.
Well,
Yes, I can. I just unmuted myself. David,
do we have somebody?
I have a quick question.
Hi, Carolyn, give me 1 sec. It seems your
So sorry.
volume is kind of low in the room. I'm glad you can hear us. Okay, let me get that adjusted, okay?
Perfect.
Welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm late. Are you guys on old business already?
We are on old business, yes.
Okay. So you approved the minutes?
Yes, we did. And by the way, Bo has amended the agenda pack to include, all the pages.
Okay,
And I sent out the minutes that you had sent me to the committee so that everybody would have a chance to read them before we got here tonight.
okay,
So we have approved your minutes, the minutes of the last meeting in total, all pages included.
okay. I'll wait for the video for the vote and all that other stuff that goes on. So
Okay,
that's
okay.
fine. But I did have if you're ready to have my question now, may I ask it?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just, in all this, first of all, could somebody please, what does FURM stand for?
Let's see here.
And if you want to, you can send that to me in a note. I don't need to waste any time on that now.
Okay.
But the other thing is, is the row mitigation complete?
No. So it goes back to the issue of the amount of funding the town had for this year, which was $15,000.
Yeah,
The total number of acres in the rights of way is 14, in a little bit. But CUSP could only work 5.6 out of the 14 acres.
and have they done that? Have they completed those 5 acres, I guess is what I'm
I
asking.
believe they have.
Okay,
So part of the workable acreage that we're talking about, to complete the grant would be to complete the other 8, call it 8 acres of the rights of way, and then look at acreage in other parts of town around the Thomas Trail work that's already been done. There's some areas that could still use some more remediation, but it's all dependent on Adrian, the forester, getting out and doing field work to determine what is workable.
okay, but you said that you had 14 acres, is that right, of row work? We only had money to complete 5 acres, so the remaining 9 acres then would be folded, would be covered by these 2 grants?
Yeah, the 2 grants are not new. We're getting close to the end of life, and there's still funding available.
Okay, thank you. I'm
Okay.
I'm clear.
FIRWORM stands for Forest Restoration and Wildfire Risk Mitigation Grant.
Wildfire risk mitigation, is that a Colorado thing?
It is a state of Colorado fund.
Great.
And
right.
the SFA grant is the State Forestry Association, I believe. If I'm not,
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that.
yeah, no problem. Lisa, you had a question?
Oh, I think you answered it when you were talking to Carolyn about where the work would be done.
Okay.
For the grant.
One other mitigating factor, I guess, in terms of trying to allocate funds, as I said earlier, there's still money within these grants that private property owners could use. So to the extent that private property owners come in and say, hey, I'd like to participate, then that'll get carved out of the acreage that's for the town property.
Oh,
Does the
So
private,
it-
sorry.
So it would reduce the total amount of funding the town would have to provide
Right.
if private property owners came in.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my question.
Okay.
would you mind?
Instead of mitigating factor.
Yeah. No pun
Yeah.
intended.
And tell me again when that CUSP grant extension or the
So there's
ends as not of now?
the 2 grants, or the SFA and the FIRWORM grants. So there's 2.
Okay,
So one of them, and I don't know which one,
okay,
expires in April of 24.
Okay.
The second expires October of 24.
okay.
But Adrian is going to attempt to get both of those grants extended by 3 to 6 months. He's
Oh.
going to get the maximum extension he can, so that we really will get another full year
Okay,
in 2024. So
that's great.
it is good. It's very good.
Does a list exist of how many property owners have taken advantage of this CUSP grant?
There is a list that I could get from CUSP. I don't have it. I don't think I've ever had it or have ever seen it, but I probably could get it from CUSP.
I'm not interested in names. I'm interested in how many people, what the interest has been in this. And
Yeah, how many, the number of properties.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It would be interesting, that's all.
Right. Yep. So yeah, I could ask Adrian for that information, how many property owners in Green Mountain Falls have actually participated in this program. But, you know, anecdotally, or just, you know, having talked to people in town, I would say, just as a wild guess, there's probably, oh, you have it?
This is all the.
Oh, no. What she's asking is private no, we're off of right away. We're talking about private property owners. I would say, Carolyn, that it's probably 15, if not more,
Okay,
15 properties.
all right. Thank you again.
And I'll get that information.
All right.
That is about as complete of an explanation of background that I can give everybody at this point about what we know about these two grants and their expiration and the funding required. Okay. So are there any questions more? Okay. So let's go to item B, which is the budget recommendation discussion. And we previewed this a bit in our last meeting, but I think we're at a point now where we need to formalize what the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee is going to recommend to the town as a budget for 2024. So could you turn to or scroll down to the Falls. Is it the one before? Right there. That's it. Okay, so we're going to try not to rehash this too much because this really is all the things we've just said. I believe that at a minimum, the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee should recommend to the Board of Trustees that it fund completely its share of assuming that we get the Kirkpatrick Family Fund grant, that the town would fund its share of the total CUSP grants remaining, which would for the town would be $40,600. A number of people, when I've said that, have been somewhat surprised. In the last Board of Trustees meeting, when we presented the Kirkpatrick Family Fund grant application for approval to submit it retroactively, this discussion did come up. There were a number of questions. I think the BOT is well aware at this point that this is the amount of money that it would take. So this will not be a surprise to the Board of Trustees that we would recommend this amount. There were a lot of questions in that meeting. And I thought good questions, clarifying questions from some of the trustees. So this will not be a surprise. You know, in another Board of Trustees meeting earlier this year, the committee, as you all were part of it, but the committees recommended the priorities to the Board of Trustees, and number one on the priorities from the committees was fire mitigation. So, you know, you kind of put these two hand in hand. We're saying to the board, okay, the committees have said fire mitigation is a priority. This is a big chunk of money, but this is important. So anyway, as I said, at a minimum, I think that our budget request should include this 40,600. And I'm not going to ask for a motion right now because I want to discuss everything that's on the table to come up with a final number. Kelly had proposed, actually, her narrative, if you'll scroll down or up just a little bit.
Sure thing. I believe Kelly just joined the meeting,
Oh, okay.
actually.
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't realize I would be this late. I had to pick Jax up from football.
Well, we're glad you made it. Better late than never. But we now will include you as participating in the meeting. So we're down to we're talking about the budget recommendation to the Board of Trustees, Kelly. And we just got down to the proposal that you had made, and there were two elements of this. You had talked about a tool lending closet. And secondly, if we continue to do education programs, as we did with the No Floco video a month or so ago, there would be some cost associated with, serving some sort of refreshments to be an inducement for someone to come rather than it depending on to make pies for us every single time.
Yeah, that would be nice, but I don't think it's realistic.
Yeah.
I'll do my best.
I am open to some discussion on the tool lending closet. If I'd be interested in input from everybody on the committee on that. Because, what Kelly proposed was $1,000, and I don't think we can, do both of those things for $1,000. So if we wanted to do both, we'd have to increase the amount of money.
Okay. Yeah, I have no idea what it would cost to get those tools. Maybe some people would be willing to donate them if they have extra. Who knows?
Yeah, I think donations, that would be pretty easy to get some donations for the lending closet.
Mhm.
When we were talking about that, Kelly, that wasn't, I can't take credit for that. It wasn't really an original idea. I've seen, and I can research this a little bit, but I've seen some tool libraries, I think they call them. And it is kind of donation based, and then I don't know how they deal with liability, and what kind of tools, should a chainsaw be in there? It's more high maintenance and more dangerous, and so there's a lot to talk about, but I think it'd be a great community for that. I think it's the right place for that kind of an idea.
Yeah. Well, I know, I just thought it was such a fabulous idea because up at Storehouse Ministries in Woodland Park, they have a medical lending closet. And, they lend out all kinds of stuff to the community. You don't even have to be, a member of the church. You just have to have a need. And here, I guess it would be Green Mountain Falls residents that are doing, mitigation tools. But again, like you said, would we want for more complicated tools like chainsaws and things like that, if somebody, breaks it, who pays to get it fixed, all those little technicalities. But maybe some of the simpler things like limb loppers and things like that. Weed whackers, lawn mowers.
Do you have any thoughts on
Yeah,
this?
no, Kelly, I think this is a terrific idea, and I could imagine combining it with educational efforts. So in addition to the lending closet, you show people how to use those tools. I agree about the concern regarding power tools, chainsaws especially. But, even hand saws, anything we could do, limbing up trees with a, extended handsaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would do a lot of good. It would be relatively safe and low cost. And we could combine that with an educational effort. So yeah, I think there's lots of great synergies here.
so there's a big leap from idea to execution. You can have a lot of great ideas, but, and I don't mean to say but, because that always means a negative, but I think what we need, if we want to pursue this, is a really more developed plan for how this would get implemented, because I think some of the considerations here is, number one, where are these tools residing so that they can be lent? Number two, who is the responsible party for unlocking the closet where the tools are and checking them out? Maybe it's only one day a week that, people can come and get them, and, you'd have to have some term. How long do they get to keep them? Is it a week? Is it a month? What happens if the tool gets lost? Do people need to put down a deposit? Do they need to, if they don't ever return it, how do you replace it? To me, there are a lot of execution issues around this good idea, but at this point, for us to propose it as part of a budget to the Board of Trustees, I don't think it's well developed enough. That's just my view on this.
And when is our submission due?
Well, since we have Bo here with us, maybe you can give us some insight on that. Last time I talked to Becky, I didn't get a real clear answer. I told her that we were going to be taking the budget discussion up in this meeting for developing our recommendation, and her reaction was, that's great because we're going to need it.
Sure. We're actually doing an amended budget with the Board of Trustees tomorrow. And then the 2024 budget needs to be approved. It's kind of interesting. In our code, it says in the first meeting of the year, which doesn't make sense to me, because then we've spent money that hasn't been appropriated.
Mhm.
So Nate actually pushed it in December, and I expect we'll do the same thing this year.
But you will need to do some advanced work as the town staff to prepare that budget for submittal and recommendation to the BOT.
Absolutely.
Last year, the committees were asked to come in and present their budget before the town staff had actually developed it.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't know if we're going to do that again this year or not. And what would the timing for that be if we are going to do it? Would that be October, so that it gives y'all November to sort of put the budget together so you can present it to the Board of Trustees in December for approval?
Yeah, I would say sooner than later would be my guess. Did you feel like that system worked pretty well, having each?
Well, I think
respective committee?
it took the burden off the town staff to, I'll use the term, to sell the recommended budget, right? I mean, it was the committee who was presenting and saying, here's what we're recommending, here's why. And give the trustees a chance to ask questions, get clarification as a preamble to when the staff actually presents the formal budget for review and approval. So
I like that. I think it makes the most sense to, because then we're not, a staff guessing what needs are or leaving anything out. And,
yeah,
it takes some pressure off me. So
yeah,
I love it.
Okay.
I'll get back with you on a game plan on that.
Well, that'd be nice.
As soon as
So
possible.
if I kind of work backwards, this is our, September meeting. We won't meet again until October, end of October. I would think that we need to have the committee, Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee, agree on a budget number and what's in it at tonight's meeting, so that if you decide to have presentations from the committee sometime between now and our next meeting, we have acted on it in terms of as a committee and what we're recommending.
Yeah, if you're ready to do that, I don't think it's gonna hurt to have, you know, your ducks in a row on the early side.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
So, can we, let's come back to this. I'd like to scroll forward, because Paul had a, recommendation as well. So as I said, I want to try to get all this on the table at one time. Paul, do you want to take this?
Yeah, David, so just broadly speaking, if, budgets, should reflect the town's priorities. If the number one priority is fire mitigation, then the number one expenditure should be fire mitigation. The first thing we fund should be our first priority. Right now, I don't know that that's fully implemented. I think the enforcement of the nuisance tree ordinance, and Bo, I'm gonna ask you a question in a second. Yeah, is an important step forward. In a moment, I'm gonna ask Bo. I believe, Bo, the nuisance tree ordinance has finished its second reading and the third reading is tomorrow. Is that correct?
no, that's been adopted.
So it's
We're
fully passed.
second reading, yeah.
Okay,
So has it been published in the local, newspapers,
Oh, yeah,
public notice?
we gave public notice about the hearing and everything.
Okay.
All that's done.
okay, so it's an ordinance of the town now.
Yep.
Yeah, and so my thought is that we should fund the enforcement of that ordinance. Now, as I understand it, the mayor and the board have settled on a professional arborist is the only way to do inspections to enforce the tree ordinance. Is that correct?
I'm going to tell you what I have, what my understanding is, and that, so
Yeah.
that carries about as much weight as.
It beats mine. So
Okay,
yeah.
so the last discussion that I heard was that even though the attorney for the town recommended that that in the early stages of determining dead or diseased trees, but more specifically, diseased trees, that before the town could take action, it would need to have that tree identified by an arborist as qualifying
Right.
as a diseased or dead tree. At which point the town could then go forward to notify the property owner. The reason that the attorneys wanted to handle it that way was because they wanted to make sure that the town was not at risk if, in case a property owner wanted to dispute the citation.
Right.
So if the property owner wanted to dispute citation, then the town would not be on good ground because a professional had not determined that tree to be.
Yeah.
Okay. So to make it more workable, the idea has been floated that rather than getting the arborist opinion early in the process, that we could make the determination, you know, have a designated person. I don't know who that is. Make a determination of a dead or diseased tree, and a citation or a letter would be sent to a property owner and say, you know, according to our nuisance tree ordinance, these trees need to be removed.
Mm-hmm.
And you have, you know, I'm sort of ad-libbing here. You have 30 days to do that. Otherwise, you know, we will come and cut it down and you'll be responsible for the fees associated with that. So in that first go around, if a person says, oh, okay, well, I'll get that taken care of, you've got no argument, right? But if the citizen said, I'm not doing that,
Right.
you know, take me to court. Then in that case, we'd have to hire an arborist to make sure that the town's demand is fully supported by a professional.
Right.
Okay, so Bo, you have any color on that or?
No, I think you did that perfectly. My take on the whole correspondence back and forth, I didn't see where legal specified, the point at which an arborist had to be involved. As I understood it, it was like, don't go over on someone's property and cut anything down until a pro arborist has looked at it, if it gets to that level. But I don't think that we need to consult with an arborist, to send the citation out for the
Right.
preliminary steps that you highlighted.
Right.
I think the missing point or missing element here is I don't think that a decision has been made by the town staff or the BOT as to who is that person, that town employee or volunteer, who is it that's going to identify the tree and who is it that's going to send the citation? That has not been determined unless there's some information I don't have.
Yeah, that is kind of vague. So like, as I understand it, which isn't worth much, but you get a complaint. And so that's one person saying, I think this is a dead and dying nuisance tree, right? That comes into our office here and somebody from the office goes and looks at it and says, well, I agree. And then we notify the marshal. Marshal goes out, looks at it, agrees, writes the citation. So at this point, you've gotten, a consensus of 3 people respectively, from wherever they sit who think, they agree, and a citation's been issued. I think should it go to court, that's the point where, we have to have our ducks in a row and make sure that an arborist agrees with us.
Yeah.
So
I think where we are is we now have, or close to having, the ordinance itself approved and official. We do not have a methodology in place on how to enforce it.
Right. And it sounds like the first 3 steps of that process, citizen complaint, staff inspection, marshal inspection, occur at no additional cost to the town. Right? Those are people who are already paying.
Right.
And that's just an additional duty they now have. The only cost would be then if it did go to that last step, which would be an arborist. So my proposal is that we establish some fund that is a pilot program, relatively small amount. It could be $2,000. But that in the event that it does get to that point where there's a legal dispute and we need an external expert, that we don't need to do any supplemental appropriation. There's a fund set aside for resolving those disputes. And so that's another part of the town's toolkit to enforce the nuisance tree ordinance. In the first year of enforcement, I hope, and I think Todd, the mayor, talked about this, we're going to do a lot of advising and educating and encouraging. The goal is not to be coercive. And so that can all occur relatively inexpensively. And so the additional fund that I'd recommend would be a small set aside pilot program for that highest level contingency where we do need to bring in an outside professional.
I have a question. What if someone says, I know that you're right, I just don't have the money to do it. Can you help? Would the public works guys be permitted to take that down for the citizen?
It's a good question, Kelly. I think it goes back to the issue of we have the ordinance in place. We don't have a methodology. We don't have all the steps defined. I mean, even for identifying the tree, and then the next step is what happens if the property owner doesn't remove it? Does the town remove it? And if so, who, is it the maintenance department, or do they have the skill set to do it? Do they have the tools to do it? Those are all
Public
things
Works-
from my
Public
standpoint.
Works has worked on the trees down by the stream, like on those big willows and stuff.
Who has, I'm sorry?
The public works guys, as far as I know.
That's actually, I looked into that a little bit. That is actually technically right of way, so it's town-owned properties. I'm not sure about, town staff like entering onto private land. And all the legalities of that. Just shooting from the hip, my guess would be that it would be that arborist or unarborist who would be contracted to go do that work. And then how that bill is paid could potentially be negotiated with that owner, if they were in agreement, but just didn't have the financial resources at the time. But I'm guessing it wouldn't be town staff, or public works or anything going on and doing that. So, but I can get you clarification on that. That would definitely be a Becky one.
And for our purposes tonight, I don't think we need to fully flesh out the enforcement mechanisms. First, because it's not our role. I mean, the enforcement.
We could recommend, but.
Yes, absolutely. But in terms of the topic on the table, which is a budget proposal, my proposal is a relatively modest amount, and I can certainly do some more research on what that amount would be. But that as a contingency fund, in the event we had to get an outside professional to assist, and we could make that fund, it could be not only an arborist, but it could be a sawyer who just needs, hey, I would love to comply, I can't. And so we could, as Kelly points out, maybe there could be some town assistance. But establishing a contingency fund for the enforcement of the nuisance tree ordinance, I think, is a good budget line item done as a pilot program in fiscal year 24, and then grown based on the lessons we learned from this first year.
To add just a little color, I know that if you call the Colorado State Forestry Service to come to your property to assess trees, the last time I checked, it was a $75 fee to have a forester, Colorado State Forester, come to your property. So, in trying to figure out how much is the right amount of money, I mean, there's a data point that says a visit from a qualified person would cost you $75 to give you an opinion.
So if we said we had 20 of those, that would be $1,500. I'm confident there are 20 nuisance trees in Green Mountain Falls. There are 20 within sight of my front door. But again, I don't think we need to solve the whole problem all at once. That might be a good baseline. We just say, if we fund 20 inspections at $75 a piece, that would be, understood as a pilot program to get it off the ground, and then learn, from experience in the ordinance's first year, and then we'll have some data going into subsequent years. That would be my recommendation.
Okay. So of all the, I want to try to pull this together now. Of all of the recommendations from the committee for compiling a budget recommendation from the committee to the BOT, our list includes the matching funds for the CUSP grant, education funding, and a pilot program for nuisance tree enforcement. Those three items total 40,600 plus 1,041. So, and you're saying 1,500?
You're right.
Okay. So $43,100 is kind of where we are, I think.
Yes.
That does not consider the whole tool closet issue, which I believe is an idea which needs more it needs to be fleshed out in terms of an execution. So that, because I don't know how you would go about recommending funding for that without having some idea of how you would implement it.
Right.
And I'd be,
Yeah, it was more of a brainstorming suggestion than it was anything else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
and Kelly, I'd be happy to work on the details of that if you'd want to do that before the next meeting, and we could kind of work out some kinks and propose what we're thinking on that.
Sure.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So, do you all believe that there are, and I know that one of the trustees has already said that if we follow the same pattern as last year, that when the committees come forward to present their budget, that we do it on a line item detail basis, so that the committee is not being, or the trustees are not being asked to approve a lump sum.
Right.
They would like to know what is in our proposal. My experience in presenting to the Board of Trustees is I've not had a warm reception for budget requests which are not tied specifically to something. In other words, saying we need, I think one year we said we wanted $5,000 for literature development. And, you know, that wasn't received very well. So I think, you know, they need something, you know, that really is pretty concrete in order to consider it. So, I guess where I'm going with that is, is there anything else that we as a committee think should be included in a budget recommendation? Not meaning you'll get it, but as a recommendation. You know, last year we recommended a siren as a notification system, and that was not received well. In fact, it was not approved. So are there other things? It doesn't mean that just because we don't think that they'll approve something that we shouldn't recommend it.
My only recommendation would be not an additional line item, but a provision that in the event that the CUSP grant, due to a lack of workable acres, for example, we can't fully meet, let's say we appropriate enough to get 170 total, and the workable acre amount only gets us to 140, that we try to keep that remaining funding within the fire mitigation budget line, and it might be repurposed to, you know, fund a lending closet or provide additional inspection money, so that it doesn't get repurposed back into the town general fund. Now I know not all that 170 is ours, and we won't get to grab the Kirkpatrick family's money or CUSP money, but to the portion the town puts up, in the event it's not fully expended due to lack of workable acres or other issues, that it be repurposed within fire mitigation to other priorities.
I think that's a great idea, Paul. And you know, one thing that happens throughout the year is that there are grant opportunities that at this point in time we don't know about. You know, that the state may fund something for fire mitigation in communities, and a lot of times those grants do require a match.
Mhm.
So I think we have to contemplate that could well occur.
Right.
That there may be opportunities to apply for grants where matching is required with dollars instead of in kind. And so in that case, what we could do is in our presentation say, we'd like for the money that's set aside, even if it's not spent on SFA, furworm, CUSP programs, if those programs don't use up all the money, we'd like for that to be available for other grant grant application opportunities where matching is required.
Right,
That sort of verbiage.
yes.
So we have some fungibility of those dollars that are allocated.
Right. Yeah, they could be repurposed within the overall fire mitigation line item.
Okay. So given that discussion, I think we're at a number of about 43, we'll just round it off and say $43,000. Is utilizing the recommendations that we've covered here tonight as sort of the template of the line items that we might propose, and the total dollars being in the neighborhood of $43,000 that we would propose. What I make a motion that this committee recommend 43,000 according to these items that we've discussed. And that the 43,000 would be fungible across projects throughout the year. And that I, as the chair of the committee, would be granted the approval of this committee to write the final document that would be presented to the board, so that we as a committee don't have to come back together and then that's my motion, I think.
Okay. And so to clarify, David, would we see a draft before it went forward? Even if we didn't do a meeting?
I certainly could send a draft. I would be willing to write it and then send that draft for everybody to review.
And we'd be okay with open meeting laws doing that.
Here's what you can't do. I could send you a draft. You could you could respond to that draft, and I could make revisions and send that draft out again as a final. But I think a final approval of that would require a formal meeting. And do you think, I mean, Bo, based on your knowledge of sunshine laws?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think you can blind copy everybody and send out a correspondence. But you wouldn't want to reply all. You have to be careful not to reply all with your answers. So you can just send directed feedback to the sender only.
Right.
And then you could gather that information and then represent a consensus document for a vote.
Would the vote though require a formal noticed meeting?
I think it would have to be at one of these. Yeah.
Well, and
We could call a special meeting.
yeah, or, we could delegate to David the authority to prepare a draft budget submission with a top line, let's say it's 43,000, circulate it as a draft, and then you incorporate our feedback. But ultimately, as long as it falls within that guidance, and it's our budget submission, those three items, $43,000, we wouldn't have to approve the final document. That would save us both time and meeting time, because if you hit three budget items and you hit a dollar figure, the words you say within that document, I trust your discretion and how you would word that, but that seems to me to be a kind of a reasonable middle ground.
Okay. So make sure I'm understanding. I would draft the document. I would send it out for review and comment. I would then take those comments, redraft the document, and it would become a final document without further approval.
Yes,
Okay.
that would be my, I guess I'm suggesting an amendment to your motion.
Yeah.
Okay. So the my recommended amended motion is that we delegate to David the authority to draft a FY24 budget submission that addresses CUSP funding, education, and a pilot program for nuisance tree enforcement with a top line figure of $43,000, with a draft going out to committee members and the final publishing authority delegated to David.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Okay, thank you. Okay, what's our next agenda item there? Mr. Bowe? Education program update. I guess I was just curious, in this, do we have we given any thought to any more, programs like we had with No Floco for the community at large? I mean, we've got the upcoming, evacuation exercise. That's I think September 25th, and then the actual evacuation exercise will be on the 7th of October. I mean, to me, that kind of falls into education, although that's not within our purview. But have y'all contemplated from an education standpoint any other program, any other things for us?
Kelly and I are going to the past back to school night, but as far as another movie night,
Okay.
yeah,
If y'all haven't worked on it or talked about it, could you before our next meeting and present whatever thoughts or ideas you have so that we can have some discussion on that?
What I'm thinking is that I would like to present that Floco video again. For people who didn't have the opportunity. And we wouldn't necessarily have to have Dawn back. We could just present the video.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we have the competence to present it and field any questions.
I agree.
So
So, all right, well, why don't y'all work on that, flesh it out, and let's have a discussion about the specifics, what,
Right.
when, where.
Kelly, were you thinking October timeframe or November?
I think
Did you have-
October would be better,
Okay,
simply
Before the holiday.
because when you start getting into November and December, people are way too busy to find the time to attend anything like that.
yeah, I would agree.
Okay, that very likely would be before our next meeting. So if that's something the two of you want to plan and execute, then I say go for it.
Okay.
But you won't have any funding for
Oh,
for
that's
refreshments.
We can make that work, I believe.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll leave it up to y'all. Just
Okay,
if you will communicate though, so that we're all in the loop.
sure.
Okay. All right. Anything else on education?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Monthly tip, Paul.
so my proposal for the monthly tip is the nuisance tree ordinance, that we send that out along with the contact number, which I assume is going to be the town hall main contact number, and inform people that there's a new ordinance. If they have a nuisance tree, to call that number, and that be our kind of initial public education effort on the nuisance tree ordinance.
Is it official? It is. Or will it be tomorrow night after the meeting?
Yeah, I was under the impression that it was, that there was a third reading, but, yeah, but, yeah. um, And we certainly want to wait until it is law. We don't want to get in front of,
Yeah.
us making law.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not in tomorrow. I think it's a done deal. And that's kind of what I remember. I have one more thing to check, you know.
Can we get clarification of that tomorrow night at the meeting? Just make sure that we're not on thin ice, that, just make sure, or ask Becky tomorrow or something.
Yeah, and this wouldn't go out until the
Yeah,
end of the month,
yeah.
so we have a little bit of time.
Are we ready to move on? I would say from a standpoint of taking an action, I accept and make a motion that we accept Paul's recommendation for our next monthly tip is the nuisance tree ordinance publication to our distribution list, pending getting affirmation from Becky that it's
No,
Final.
it's a done deal, and I have it on our website.
okay. All right. Then you're
Here it is under all signed by the mayor. And these are the posting dates here.
Yeah, so my proposal would be that center paragraph that defines a nuisance tree, yes, that would be our update. And then because there's a lot of like statutory language in there I would include. But and then the contact number. If you think there's a nuisance tree that's affecting your property, call town hall at. And I can work with you, Bo, on making sure that I get
Sounds good.
the language formatting number right.
Yep.
So we have a motion for the nuisance tree ordinance being our monthly tip to be sent out in October.
Second?
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No, motion carries. Proceed.
Okay.
By the way, well, I'll address that in a minute. Oh, well, it's the next thing. No, sorry, September Chipper Day. I think I've copied everybody on the emails that I sent today.
Mhm.
It was a great success. I think had more people than we've ever had before, 35 total. One of the reasons that I do send out a thank you note to people who participate is because I have discovered that when I send that out, invariably I will get somebody that says, y'all didn't pick up my slash. And that happened.
oh no.
Okay.
So we have two people on Mountain Ave at the very end, Kelly, your street, Mr. John Heisen and Chris and Molly Nord. I think I am getting that right.
Yep.
10,680 and 10,750.
So they're the last two houses on the street.
Yep, they were missed. Although John, Mr. Heisem, when he called today, said he saw the fire truck come up and turn around and leave. And he said that was the last he saw. I have talked to Chief Murphy about it by email. He's working on a solution to get somebody up there with a truck to pick up those slash piles. He said there was one other person down in, I think he told me in Chipeta that they missed, and they were working on getting that person as well. So I didn't hear any other complaints. I did get a lot of feedback from people thanking us. It was, they really appreciated it. They appreciate the work of the committee, the fire district. And so, Lisa, you have some information about future chipper days?
Right. So the chief doesn't want to continue picking up from homes in Green Mountain Falls because going up and down the roads is too difficult. And I think he's been working possibly with Joyland, Becky, and having a main drop-off point. And when I was with the firefighters on Chipper Day, some of them said that just in the past, they've gotten so much more slash when it's been, say, at Ute Pass years ago. So, yeah.
So the bottom line is that before we have another chipper day, we're going to have to really find out or work on the logistics of how that might work. And that'll have to be.
Right. It sounds like the chief's already, working on a slash site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
good.
So,
And you mentioned the Boy Scouts as a part of that potential
right.
solution.
Yeah.
And you've made an
so-
introduction, and I just remembered I haven't
Yeah.
responded to that, but
Yeah. So, Jonathan Dooley is the scoutmaster of the Ute Pass troop. And back in the day, I'm not sure how many years ago that was. Would you remember, Paul? It was at Ute Pass, and Jonathan had gotten a grant for many dumpsters to be hauled off for slash. And I believe the fire department chipped it, put it in the dumpsters, was hauled off with his grant money. And the scouts, he said, was super successful for their donations, that they made like $3,000 or $4,000
Wow.
for the scouts. So when Kelly, Jen, and I were at the Manitou Middle School, we ran into Jonathan, and Jen had kind of said maybe we should work together, and he was up for considering that. And so Becky had also asked about maybe getting the scouts involved with some of the grant things she's working on. So I just made a introductory email to Jonathan, David, Becky, just so would have each other's numbers. So, and then David, you had said that the spring date, it all depends on chipper availability
Yep.
and all that. So, yeah.
well, and the other idea that I thought that you had that I thought was a really good one, and I will respond to that email of introduction. I'm sorry I haven't done that already. You recommended that we ask John to come to one of our meetings of the
Right.
Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee so that we could maybe explore
Right.
what possibilities there might be to engage the scouts in any number of things that we might be working on.
Yeah. He wasn't available for tonight's meeting, but I think he said he would be interested in coming to another meeting. So,
Okay.
Lisa?
Well, it sounds like we already have at least the nucleus of an idea on, a different way to approach it next time. But, I think that everybody did a great job on getting the word out, coordinating, getting volunteers, whole deal. So
Yeah.
it was a success.
Well done.
Yeah,
Lisa, I had a quick question.
oh yeah,
I seem to recall, you said something about, that, is the Ute Pass, is that a viable, is that in the mix again for a possible slash drop off? Because I
Oh,
understand,
at Ute Pass Elementary.
yeah,
No,
no, I did, okay, because of the noise, right? I mean, because parents objected?
Yeah, neighbors weren't too crazy about that, and we've kind of talked to Jesse about possible
Okay,
a drop off at Joyland, which is pretty perfect because he has like a
Okay.
road turnaround. Chief Murphy says that when people do that drop off slash, they come in with trailers, and I think they get an incredible amount, and the amount of chipping takes a lot of their manpower. But the chips can be spread as part of the horse sanctuary, and that can be locked so that that property doesn't get people dropping slash off after hours. So there's a lot of great
good,
possibilities
great.
to work with there. And
Has he talked to Chris about that yet? Or, I mean, wasn't he gonna have to talk to Chris about that? And
yeah, so Jesse was gonna ask Mr. Kissy about that, because I believe that's his own personal property. It's not part of the foundation. But Jesse had said, that he realizes and Mr. Kissy realizes that they're one of the few properties that has the space to and the lack of neighbors, and that they're always trying to help the community. So he felt good about it.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, let us. I guess we just actually got out of order here and talked about item G in conjunction with item E. EFG, yeah. So anyway, let's move on to the property owner database update. Anything new on that, Paul?
Yeah, we are now at 72, and in fact, literally as I refreshed my phone, Leslie Urick just signed up. So thank you, Leslie, if you're listening. And yes, we're so we had a big surge on 8/16 and 8/21. And that constituted 11 new signups this month.
One of the things that I did in the email that I sent out to all the participants, I don't know if y'all noticed that or not, but I asked people if they wanted to be on our database to please send me an email. And we will add them.
Yeah.
So Leslie was the person who responded
Okay.
and said she wanted to be on the list. And then I had several people who said, if I'm not already on it, please add me. But here's my information. So in case I'm on the list, but any of my information is wrong, you can update it.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
I've had some responses so far.
Yeah, that's a great practice.
can I ask a quick question around that?
Yep.
Did you ask people to opt in for just the FMAC stuff, or was it for town business?
No, it's only Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee,
Oh,
only,
okay.
nothing town.
That's something that's driving me crazy. I've been wanting to work on that too. We don't have like a central way. People call me about the neighbor's bear or, something, and I have to do a bunch of legwork to come up with some of that. I'm glad you're doing that.
How you mean that you're trying to track down addresses and phone numbers?
Yeah, one or the other, yeah, usually it's the phone number, right? Just a quick call. And if they've done business with Town Hall, if they have a business license or an STR, it's easy. And I have all that, but most people don't. And that's out there. Yeah. But yeah, that's great. I might try to do something similar. I might ask you about that later. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. As I said, we talked about slash drop off program for spring of 24. Anything else on that?
Is there anything you'd next step I should be working on or?
No, I think
Uh,
I think we have a little time that we can,
Okay.
I think we have to let some things unfold.
Yes, okay.
I think the next step would be to have John, the Scoutmaster, join us in one of our meetings
Okay.
and talk about, get some ideas from him.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Then next is the CWP update discussion. We did have a meeting week before last here at Town Hall. And we had Teller County Emergency Management. We had CSU. We had Chief Murphy, Becky, and myself, and I think I'm missing somebody. It was a smaller group than what we had invited, but I took on the responsibility to review the current CWPP and the current requirements of an updated CWPP and sort of build a recommendation to Becky as to what we need to do in terms of next steps. So really, it was more of an organizational meeting that we had. And I took on that responsibility because I wanted to force myself to read it and have accountability for reading it. And I knew if I agreed to do that, that I would have to read it. So anyway, I'm going to read it, and I've actually started, and I'm learning stuff in having done this, which was what I hoped to do. So anyway, that's just an update.
David,
Yes.
does this mean then that you are the committee's at the last meeting, you were casting about for somebody to join representing FMAC. Are you now the committee's representative to this body?
Well, at least for now. I mean, I was invited to the meeting that we had week before last, and so I attended as the FMAC representative to that meeting, and by taking on this responsibility of at least agreed to do some initial work. So I won't say that I've absolutely accepted that responsibility. In case somebody else wants to do it, that's fine with me. But I think for right now, I'm the representative.
Thank you.
Anybody want to jump in there and volunteer?
Carry on, Dave.
Okay, so formation of volunteer groups. Anything to report here? Block captains, volunteer database, tracking, any of that sort of stuff. I guess the question I have is, Lisa, did you and Paul get together? Have you all figured out whether or not we can use the current database to in some form of tracking who volunteers are? And one thing that would be really helpful that the trail ambassadors and the Friends of Ute Pass Trails do is they keep up with the hours of volunteer hours. And I think we really need to start doing that, because when you start rolling into things like the CWPP and the fire adapted community and Firewise and those kinds of programs, that is a real key component, is tracking community volunteer hours.
Okay.
Yeah, grants, another, that's one of the keys a lot of times to grants is how many volunteer hours is your community putting into this work? So is there I guess the question I have is, can we utilize the existing database and sort of add to it in a way that keeps our information in one source? In other words, she had 6 volunteers lined up this weekend to do, well, we need to record that these are people who have volunteered for us in the past. We might go back to them in the future. We need their contact information. We need how many hours they worked on what day, what project. I mean, is that possible, or we just need to create a new database?
Pardon me. Yeah, at least I'll get with you. I think there's a way to do this.
Okay,
We don't have to recreate a separate database.
Okay.
Yeah, and the more knowledge we can centralize, I think the better.
okay. So
And
I,
is that something we can include the hours we've already put in this year? All of
Yes,
us?
to the extent that we can kind of go back and recreate some of that, Kelly, I think we should.
I do too. That in kind really makes a difference. It adds up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Paul. So yes, Lisa,
Okay,
I'll
okay.
get with you
yeah,
offline.
okay.
We'll sort it out.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
So to the extent that, we can recreate volunteer hours of this year, I think we should.
Mhm.
Yeah, so if any of you have, notes or recollections of, a project that we did or volunteers that worked and the number of hours, then, try to put that down and make it as accurate as possible, and we'll incorporate that into our database.
To include our own work, right? Like we're volunteers, that could go into the tally as well, couldn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, every little bit helps if we,
Yeah.
add those hours up.
And so I have the emails from Spring Chipper Day and this Chipper Day. And I guess we can add No Flow Co. to that, even though he's
Yeah.
maybe not on our list, but we could
Yeah.
add him.
Our
Don?
time at the,
Don.
our
Don
time
Moore?
at the
Yeah.
schools.
And our time at the schools, yeah.
Absolutely.
John and Paul were down at the post office several times.
Yeah, and I would probably characterize that as education.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, how are we feeling about block captain thing? You've got one.
We got one, no more progress, although Ed and I are going to do an assessment
Are you?
tomorrow, so, yeah.
All right.
So Ed's remains engaged, but no new leads on more block captains.
Okay. Okay, well, that concludes our old business. In terms of new business, we had the KFF grant application, which we discussed at length earlier. I will just share a comment that is unofficial. In talking to Jesse about a week ago, he said that Liz had indicated to him that they will award that grant. So but that's, anyway. By the way, if they do award it, the funds will not be available until December. So that'd be the earliest that and I've already let Adrian know so that he can start thinking about how he wants to tackle this, in terms of defining everything.
Mhm.
I didn't want to drop it on him in December. So, okay, we got the money now.
Yeah.
Did they say within December by chance?
No.
That would mesh well with the budget.
Yeah.
I'll see if Jesse can give me a little more. Yeah. Okay. Okay. The really important item here, number 6B. Could you scroll to that, please? This, I had a situation recently, I was talking to one of our town residents who to give a little background. So when we were working the rights of way, CUSP had, based on their previous experience, knew that CSU would not want them to cut within a certain distance of CSU's power lines. CUSP on this project actually went to CSU and confirmed. They went and said, hey, look, we're going to be working on the town rights of way. What's your policy on cutting trees? And they said, you can't cut any trees that are within a certain distance of our power line. So CUSP has honored that. I was looking at one of the rights of way that cuts down from actually behind your house, Paul. And I saw, must have been 6 dead trees that were all right along that power line. So Mike Fry, if I use his name, told me that he had called CSU and asked them to come out and cut those trees that were along that power line. And CSU said, we don't do that. And so they won't let CUSP do it. They won't do it. So, I decided to write this memo as a draft of what I would say is a recommendation from the committee, from the Fire Mitigation Committee to the Board of Trustees, asking the Board of Trustees to empower the town manager to have a letter drafted from our attorney to CSU, essentially a demand letter, demanding that CSU address the issue of dead trees on our rights of way and along their power lines. And if for no other reason, I cited in the second paragraph, there are numerous examples of wildfires resulting from power lines and other utility infrastructure, to wit, the Paradise Canyon fire in California and the recent Lahaina fire in Hawaii. To date, despite numerous requests for action, CSU has refused to remove nuisance trees from and around its infrastructure. Indifference, reluctance, and resistance from our utility provider is an unacceptable risk to our town's welfare and property, as already experienced in other communities. I think personally that ought to be said, that it is a reminder to CSU, you are creating a liability for our town, the welfare of our citizens and our property by not addressing this. It's unacceptable. So I kind of get worked up over this now, but it's like this. Nobody wants to take responsibility. And I think it's time for the town rather than individual citizens calling CSU, hey, I've got this dead tree, would you come and cut it? And they go, no. I think it's time for the town to take a stand and really demand action from CSU. So I wrote this as a template just to say, hey, here's kind of what the message would be this is the message from us to the Board of Trustees recommending that they send a demand letter to CSU. So my motion is that the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee approve this letter or some form of this letter as a recommendation to the BOT, not for tomorrow night's meeting, but the next meeting in 2 weeks. And I'm open to any comments, disagreements, rewrites, whatever y'all want to do. I'm open.
Is it possible that the town has the authority to cut in our right of way, and maybe we just need to find a different contractor than CUSP? I don't know that. I don't know the answer.
No.
We don't have
The
that.
answer is CSU will not allow anyone
to
cut trees along their power lines. Doesn't matter who. So if they won't allow anybody to do it, then they should do it. Because they're creating there is a power line that runs almost, I can look out my front door and it's a very high voltage line that runs down from Hondo. And there are a number of dead trees along that power line. If any of them fall, you're going to have a major power outage. So that's thing number one. You're going to have a major power outage in our town. Thing number two is that voltage in that line. If that line breaks and it sparks and it ignites debris, you've got a fire on your hands. And it's right in the middle of the residential area of this town. So, I mean, to me, it's an imperative.
Well, it's interesting because I think one thing that would really light a fire under them is if they won't do anything, we can go to places like the TV stations who have action committees and they report it on TV. They'd get a lot of free advertising.
Right. And I mean, I really just want to start the ball rolling, if you will. I'm not, my recommendation in this, text is that we get our town attorney to write a demand letter. I mean,
I agree.
attorneys are really good at writing demand letters. So
that's the motion you're making?
is that, well, what I've presented here is that the committee would approve sending this or some form of this to the Board of Trustees in the next meeting, which would be the first Tuesday in October. Yeah. And as a recommendation to the Board of Trustees that the town manager of Green Mountain Falls is directed to send a demand letter to Colorado Springs Utilities to remove dead trees.
I'll second that.
I think that was the second one.
Oh, that was the second. I'm sorry. I didn't understand. Thank you. Kelly seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I will draft this into a more formal document. Do you have something I should use? A document? Why don't you send me that so I can get that in the proper format? Okay. Thanks, everybody. I a little bit off agenda, but same thing, as it relates to CSU. I discovered just recently that that Colorado Springs itself requires a fire hydrant every so many feet. I think it's every 500 feet in Colorado Springs. CSU told us that they follow the mandates of the towns they serve. So they said, if your town says you want fire hydrants every so many feet, so I got to explore that a little bit more, but I'm just giving y'all a heads up. That may be the next thing we do is look at a recommendation that the town adopts some sort of fire hydrant spacing for CSU. So I started looking at fire hydrants around town. There are big areas of town that are not covered. So big issue.
Interesting.
Okay, Bo, can you take us back to the agenda? I think we're done. Thank you. Okay. Yep, we're at the end. No reports, no correspondence. Any final comments from anyone? Thank you both for coming tonight and running the Zoom portion of our meeting. I really appreciate it. Made it a whole lot easier for me.
Thanks for having me and thanks for covering the other times I wasn't here.
Okay, no problem. And thanks for, you're always on it for us and we appreciate everything you do.
For sure.
I wish that were true, but I do always try.
Yes, you do. All right.
Much appreciated, Bo.
Okay, with that, we will adjourn our meeting at 7 39 PM.
And could you just tell me the next meeting is October 23?
Yeah, it'll be the last Monday in October.
Oh, 30th?
Good night, everybody on Zoom.
Good night.